Welcome to Night Storia, a realm where stories are not merely told but woven into the very fabric of eternity. Here, every whispered tale, every forgotten legend, and every untold mystery finds a home, never to fade with time. I am Sebastian, your guide through this endless night of wonders. After several episodes, we finally come to the end of the story. Without further ado, let's start the last chapter of The Cursed Child. That afternoon until midnight, Bronca walked around the city. He shouted at the top of his lungs, shouting the same words he had spoken to Rudy and Michael. The time has come. Some people, angered by Bronca's noise and disturbance, tried to arrest him. Some even tried to tease him, but none of them succeeded. Bronca managed to run away, escape the pursuit of the city dwellers, either by climbing onto the roof tiles, getting into the bushes, or jumping from one place to another. What was strange about all this was Bronca's expression, which showed no fear at all. On the contrary, he looked happy. After the clock struck midnight, Bronca could not be found anywhere. His figure seemed to have disappeared into the darkness of the night. "Where did that kid go?" said one resident in exasperation. "Let's search again, maybe he's still around," said another resident. Since Bronca's disappearance, Eldoria City had been experiencing frequent earthquakes, ranging from small ones to large enough to cause roofs to fall and glass to crack. The intensity continues to increase from once a week to almost every day. Not infrequently, there are often casualties due to the frequent earthquakes. Even though death seems to be approaching, the behavior of the people of Eldoria City remained the same, not changing one bit. Those who like to get drunk and gamble still do it every night. Those who steal and mugging still do it without caring if the victim is an elderly person, a pregnant mother, or a father who is struggling desperately for the family at home. Even prostitutes continue to spread their charms, flying and landing in places where they usually sell their services to attract men. Now, what's worse is that due to the frequent earthquakes, many businesses have ended. Closed because they lost money due to their assets being affected by the earthquake. Eldoria has truly fallen into a city of sin. Crime and ruthlessness are the familiar companions of its residents. The crime rate was increasing in Eldoria every day, until it reached a point that was hard to explain. The earthquake was getting worse by the day, and the drastically rising crime rate made Rudy Armstrong's family even more worried about leaving the house. There was no safe place in the city, as if Bronca's disappearance was a sign of the release of the leash that had been trying to tie up the disaster in the city of Eldoria. On one morning, Eldoria City was shocked by the state of the city park collapsing to form a lake-like depression without water, and in the center of the crater was a stone pillar that stood firmly, towering as if it had never been buried. In the same morning, Rudy was about to prepare to go open his shop, but his steps were halted by a small chat with Marinka. "Honey, did you know there's some exciting news in town?" Marinka said enthusiastically. Her eyes sparkled so much that Rudy couldn't help but respond. "What is it?" Rudy asked his wife back. "Listen, the city park was badly damaged by the earthquake last night, and it's said that a stone pillar was found in the middle of it." "Are you serious?" "It looks like our city is going to make national news," Rudy said in a joking tone. Marinka sighed. You're always like that." As if she wasn't satisfied, she continued, "But did you know that there was an inscription carved into the stone pillar? And Bronca's name was repeatedly mentioned there." Before Marinka could finish her sentence, Rudy interrupted her. "Bronca? Where is that boy now? He's nowhere to be seen. It used to be so easy to find him." "You know that I hate being interrupted when I'm telling a story," Marinka said with a frown on her face. She really doesn't like it when her words are interrupted by other people. "Oh, forgive me, dear." So how to proceed? Rudy reflexively apologized and showed interest so that his wife would not get angry. Enthusiastically, Marinka continued, "At the end of the stone pillar is an inscription in an ancient language which reads, "If Bronca has disappeared, then the time has come for a great disaster." How strange is that? How could it be the same coincidence as what we are experiencing today? Bronca, the strange boy, disappeared, and the city is experiencing frequent earthquakes. You're just matching these coincidences, Rudy said, while showing an apathetic expression. How can you say that? Now try to explain with your logical mind that this is indeed a coincidence. Marinka, who was upset by her husband's answer, tried to challenge Rudy to give an explanation. Rudy sighed. The answer is simple. Earthquakes are caused by friction between two plates in the Earth's crust. It has nothing to do with that strange boy who disappeared. I know that too, but how do you explain the inscription? How can it be exactly the same as what is written there? Marinka asked. If it's obvious. What's obvious? Obviously, it must be a coincidence. Hearing Rudy's answer, which seemed to simplify everything, frustrated Marinka. The debate escalated, turning into a small, inconsequential argument between a young married couple. Shortly after, the logical and mystical debate was interrupted by a television newscast announcing that tonight there would be a rare, full lunar eclipse. After seeing the news, whatever triggered it, Rudy reflexively said, "Looks like I have to close the store early today. I have a bad feeling." See? I was right. It must be all connected, Marinka said with satisfaction. Rudy was reluctant to engage his wife. Instead, he walked away, shaking his head and saying to himself, "This person really can't be helped." Time passed like water flowing in a river. It passed by without a hitch. Not even an earthquake occurred on this day. Rudy clearly felt this strangeness. He compared it to a storm that came after a calm day. As the afternoon wore on, the bad feeling grew and he wanted to close the shop as soon as possible. Although he had intended to close the shop before nightfall, it was impossible. More and more customers came in, even making Michael, who was helping out at the shop, breathless as he had to go back and forth carrying various items from the warehouse to customers' vehicles. The sky over Eldoria began to darken. As reported, there was a full lunar eclipse that night. The moon looked red as blood, casting a dark shadow over a city that had long lost its conscience. Rudy finally closed his shop later than he had planned. He locked the door and patted Michael's tired shoulder. "Let's go home, Michael." Michael nodded while wiping the sweat from his forehead, but before they could take another step, the earth shook violently again. This time, it wasn't just an ordinary earthquake. The ground beneath their feet pulsed, as if something was trying to get out of it. In the distance, the sounds of shouting and screaming began to be heard. Rudy and Michael turned their heads towards the town square, or rather, towards the giant crater that had formed there. The inscription stone in the center was glowing red, like hellfire about to engulf the world. Marinka suddenly appeared, running towards them with a panicked face. "Rudy, this is no ordinary earthquake." Rudy grasped his wife's hand tightly. "I know, something bad is happening." Suddenly a voice echoed in the sky, not the sound of thunder, not the sound of explosions, but the voice of a child they knew well. "The time has come." Rudy was stunned. He looked around, searching for the source of the voice, and there at the top of an old building stood a small boy with a thin body and tattered clothes. "Bronca?" whispered Michael in a trembling voice. The boy smiled broadly, wider than they had ever seen him before. But there was something terrible about that expression. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "It's time for this city to be punished." Bronca's voice sounded soft, but somehow echoed throughout the city. "You never learn, you never change. Now it's time for you to regret it." From the giant crevasse in the square, cracks began to appear and spread throughout the city. Scream after scream began to be heard. People who had been busy with their immoral lives ran around in panic. Those who once ignored danger, who never cared about others, now felt an overwhelming fear. Rudy pulled Marinka and Michael's hands. "We have to get out of here." "But where, Rudy?" Marinka asked in a trembling voice. Rudy had no idea. The Eldoria city, the place they now called home, had turned into something resembling hell. Up there, Bronca was still standing, smiling, but behind his smile there was something deeper: sadness, loss, or perhaps disappointment. "It's time," Bronca said once more, and with a single movement of his hand, Eldoria city was lifted into the sky. Buildings flew into the sky, the ground split, and human screams merged with the roar of destruction. Rudy, Marinka, and Michael ran with all their might, trying to find safety. But is there any safe place in the cursed city? At the last moment, before everything came crashing down, Rudy turned to Bronca. The child was now looking back at him. There was no more smile on his face. Only one word was spoken before everything disappeared into darkness: "Forgive me." The next morning, news of the destruction of Eldoria city made national news. Almost nothing was left standing. Bodies were scattered, mixed with the rubble of buildings. This was a disaster of unprecedented magnitude. Thousands of rescue teams were deployed to evacuate any victims who might have survived the disaster. Not only rescuers, but military and police were also deployed to deal with the tragedy. They helped each other to remove the debris and search for victims who might be buried underneath. Among the chaos of the disaster in the devastated city of Eldoria, a rescuer suddenly shouted loudly to his comrades, "Over here, there are still survivors." Hope appeared like the sun shining in the darkness, dispelling despair. Quickly, several people came over and surrounded the center of the sound. They quickly removed the debris that had piled up and covered the bodies of the victims. Sweat began to fall and the heat began to sting. But finally, the efforts of the rescuers paid off. 3 people were found hugging each other. There were no serious injuries suffered by the 3, only minor injuries, abrasions and slight bruises. All 3 were found unconscious with no definite cause. A stretcher was brought to transport the bodies of the 3 people to the victim care tent. In addition to the 3 people found, several other people were also found safe. One of them was a beautiful woman, dressed in luxurious clothes but with bruises and cuts all over her body. Time passed until the sun slipped from its axis, and the survivors somehow woke up simultaneously. They woke up in the same state, their memories blurred. Not a single person could remember the events of last night clearly. This raised a big question mark for everyone, including the government, who wanted to know the chronology of last night's events. All the residents of Eldoria city who survived seemed to have their memories erased. No one remembered the events of last night, and no one remembered the little boy named Bronca who brought the warning of the disaster. "Mr. Rudy, how are you feeling? Are you getting better?" a nurse asked. "I'm fine," Rudy said to a nurse. "You should lie down first," said the nurse, and then continued. "Mrs. Marinka should also lie down, so that your body can quickly recover." Marinka replied, "I understand. Thank you for taking care of us." The nurse smiled. "That's my job." She then walked away and checked on the other survivors of the Eldoria city tragedy. "Honey, what happened last night? Why are we suddenly like this?" Marinka said in confusion. "Not just us, Marinka, but the whole city. I also feel confused at this time. It's like part of my memory is missing," Rudy replied. "It seems like we're all experiencing the same thing. The last thing I remember is that we were at the store last night, and now suddenly we're here," Michael said. "I have no idea, Michael. I don't know what happened either, but we can only be grateful for what happened." Rudy looked at the ceiling of the makeshift tent set up for the victims. At that moment, no one remembered Bronca. The mysterious boy seemed to vanish from the memories of everyone who had ever lived in Eldoria city. The only thing it left behind were the ruins of a destroyed city and a few humans who might still have a conscience. Rudy fell into an almost hopeless abyss when he thought about his future survival. The business he had just started was now ruined, despite having insurance to cover all the losses. He is certain that his business will no longer be as busy as before, as Eldoria is no longer the same city. Thinking about how to support his family in the future at this time was foolish. No matter what happens next, he can only do his best to deal with it. In the silence, Rudy chuckled. He was so frustrated to realize how crazy the reality he faced was. Shaking his head, he said, "This city is really cursed." Finally, this story has ended. After hearing it, are there any lessons you can take away? If so, write it down in the comments. Maybe there are people who can be inspired by the meaning you wrote. Enough until here, our encounter. See you in the next episode.